Good morning, friends. Thanks for joining us here at Journey Home Meditation for our morning sit today. I am happy to be here. I'm happy to be here this morning. You know, it's not always the easiest thing to maintain a level of equanimity, right? And you find this flow within yourself. You're moving through the day. Things are okay. Things are level, right? And then you start coming upon different people and different situations. And so like this morning, I came upon a couple of people who were really suffering. And because of their suffering, they were fighting with each other and fighting with the world. And it was tempting to enter into that energy with them. It was tempting to get involved and enraptured in the drama and either pick a side or become the mediator of the fight. It was tempting to step into that role of crisis. I don't know if it's crisis remediation or or if it's crisis fixer or if it's crisis junkie. Some days it feels like we become so accustomed to the crisis that we become addicted to it. And we begin to pattern our lives in a way where we feel most alive, most comfortable, and most in the flow with ourselves when there's crisis present. Because there is a rush of purpose when we confront crisis. There's a sense of you have a goal, right? There's like a goal orientation, and there's this feeling of survival, and the more survivable the crisis is, the more addictive it can be to stay in that space, because then you get the gratification of succeeding, right? We get that satisfaction of being able to navigate crisis well. And this makes us feel somehow elevated. Gives us a sense that we are maybe a little stronger than others, or we're a little more tough, or we're made of something different. The big thing, people, I'm not built like you. We're built different. No, dude, you're just addicted to crisis. You're addicted to conflict. So you imagine yourself to be different than others who are not addicted to conflict. That's been me. That's been me in my life. Probably many times. Especially when I was able to get really well practiced at crisis and conflict. Then I would definitely, looking back, say that I was seeking or thriving in that space. But then you have time away from it, and you begin to find a peace and a calm in your life. And then those that way of persisting through crisis, like almost insisting upon this level of resistance in my life. It it it's there still, right? It's available to us all the time, and this isn't to say we should turn away from it at all. But this is how this practice now is becoming a way for me to now engage from a different level of my own willingness to be in crisis. What that means for me is that I can now step into a space of suffering with another, and I can hold space for suffering without also entering myself into crisis, entering myself into suffering. And I found that this helps me to see more clearly who I am within the context of suffering. Um, and I think that this also accounts for levels of perfectionism, right? This addiction to crisis, it can become a level of perfectionism when we start to insist upon levels of my life being perfect or myself being perfect. And then every imperfection feels like life or death, right? This is PTSD. This is when we are triggered into a trauma state where we've maybe had to literally make life or death decisions, or at the very least, we've patterned our way of feeling and our body's response to these situations as being life or death from young age on. So we've created this habitual way of relating to the world where it truly does feel like my survival is on the line when there's a crisis or when there's a level of imperfection. And one of the things that helps me is having mantra in my life. And one of the mantras is I don't have to be perfect to survive. I don't have to be perfect to survive today. I'm okay. And if there's things that are happening or things that I am being that are less than perfect, that's okay. That's okay. It's not my survival that's on the line. And so I work on calming my central nervous system. I breathe with intention. I stretch my body. I move myself in a way that helps to process these really high energies that come through it as they come in. You know, you can look at a dog or a cat as a great example of this somatic release of anxiety, right? Something happens and a dog will run around the yard really fast or roll around on the ground and then stretch their whole body. And then it's almost as if that high anxiety thing that occurred has processed through and it's gone. They're using their body to process traumatic experiences so that they don't become trauma, so that they don't become uh, a place um, of disconnection from themselves and their life. You know, and who's to say we don't really know what a dog or a cat are thinking, but we can witness the behavior and understand that, you know, it appears as if their central nervous system is pretty relaxed, pretty centered, pretty calm. And so using our bodies in this way can be a really helpful practice, you know, shaking it off, literally, taking a walk, stretching my body. These things are helpful. When I start to get triggered into this belief that my imperfections are a crisis, that the things I'm dealing with in my day that aren't going exactly as I want are a level of survival, right? And so then when I'm in this equanimous state, this place of feeling level, having a relaxed central nervous system, and I approach crisis with others, I approach deep suffering. I can approach that from a place of familiarity and recognition without having to join in on the suffering in that moment. I don't know that it's helpful to enter into crisis with someone when they are in crisis. I don't know that that's the best way we can actually be present for one another. Because one of the things that I find to be true for myself is that when I am in crisis, when I am truly suffering, I am not present with what's happening in the moment. I think I am. All of my senses are so finely tuned and acute in this moment that I believe myself to be fully present with what's real and what's happening, right? Because I'm so heightened. All of my experiences are so heightened in that moment. I'll believe myself to be fully present, but when there is an objective person with a regulated central nervous system that can be present with me and help me to process through all of my immediate reactions and fears and um, survival responses, then I can really start to feel myself physically coming back into my body. I can feel it. I can feel myself coming back into this room. And I can feel how my microscopic view of my suffering is not the same thing as presence of moment. It's not the same thing as being fully here. It's being so centrally focused on one reaction, one feeling in my body, that I don't see everything else. And most often, I don't see a way out. I don't see my way through that crisis, that feeling, that pain, that suffering. And it can lead to immediate negative self talk. You can start to immediately start gravitating towards really dangerous solutions in your mind, right? You know, the smallest thing can trigger a person into a belief in themselves that's a very old and cultured belief. We've really cultivated a belief, a self-belief that maybe it would be better if I left. You know, maybe it would be better if I quit this job. Maybe I should, throw this all away because it's all for nothing. We get these really big feelings, and they're only big feelings because we have such a microscopic view of the suffering. We really hone in on the suffering, and that becomes our central viewpoint. It takes up all of our vision. And when you are a person who has become accustomed to crisis after crisis after crisis, when you live marginally, when you have housing insecurity, when you are a person who is targeted in any way, queer person, people of color, indigenous peoples, parts of groups of people who are targeted by a culture of homogeny, and a culture that is reminding you there's no space for you. And this affects all of us, right? Uh, I'm not immune to that culture, that cultural stress and suffering. So when you are a part of that relationship of feeling threatened, when your survival feels threatened on a regular basis, you know, um, you can start to become accustomed to crisis as survival. And then everything that potentially poses a threat to that becomes full level, full blown life or death, fight or flight kind of response. So we jump from crisis to crisis, and we create perfectionism as a way to justify it. So there's my mantra. There's where my mantra comes into play. I do not have to be perfect to survive today. Things don't have to go the way that I want them to justify my existence. Right? Sometimes we have difficulties. Sometimes we have imperfections. I don't judge the crooked limb of a tree, but I condemn my awkward body. It doesn't make sense. But it's a way of relating to the world as a survivor. So this morning, as I came in here to Journey Home Support Services to set up and do this morning sit, I confronted suffering, people who were suffering. And I was confronted with the temptation to enter into the conflict, to somehow help, to play a part. And then I recognized that maybe the best thing I could do right now is just to be present with the people who are suffering. No mediation, no right and wrong. And so I simply invited the people who were in conflict into my space and made coffee. And we just sat. And I was able to witness within my own body and within the relationship in the room a relaxing of the feeling of survival. And there became a recognition of one another. I was suffering because I could not see you. You were suffering because you could not see me. So we were screaming at each other. We were flailing at each other because we were so unaware that we are both right here, right now, and connected. And it just took sitting in silence together, letting it relax instead of fixing it like a problem, just letting it pass like a dark cloud floating in the sky or leaves on the top of a rushing river. They're passing by. It's not going to stay. And instead of feeding the conflict, we witnessed it and we let it go. And it was beautiful. And it didn't fix the world. It didn't fix the problems. You might even be able to hear conflict occurring in the background right now outside. There are still people who are suffering. But for those moments, we were able to be together in a way that allowed us to be human. And sometimes that's what we need. That's all we need. So thanks for holding this space for me to ramble through my thought processes. I hope that sometimes the ways in which I'm relating to the world relate to you in your life. I'd love to hear about it if so. But first, let's take a few moments just to bring ourselves into our body, to release ourselves of the crisis, and to recognize ourselves as just being in this space. So if you're seated as I am with your feet flat to the floor, begin to adjust the body so that we can find balance. Balance is the place of the least amount of stress or strain, when we can open our bodies up to receive and release breath completely. Lengthening the spine, allowing the shoulders to relax. I place my hands with the palms up on my lap, and you can place your arms wherever is best facilitating your breath. This is a practice of breathing. Breath in so many languages and so many spiritual practices is called spirit or energy. And there's a recognition that our breath is what connects us to everything. So breathing in and releasing. Breathing in, I breathe in through my nose so that it causes the diaphragm to work and pull down more fully, pushing through my belly and massaging my organs as it creates space for the breath to move into my body. So I breathe in and my belly expands. And then breathe out completely. Sometimes just a few breaths is all we need to bring us back into connection with our body and with everything around us. And if you are a person who also has a belief that your imperfections threaten your survival, take these breaths and forgive yourself and love yourself just as you are. Just as you are. You are doing it right now. Breathing in, just as I am. Breathing out, just as I am. I do not need to be perfect to survive today. Just as I am. Just as I am. Just as you are. Just as you are. Just as it is. Just as it is. And stay in this place as long as you'd like, creating an intimacy with your breath, feeling the breath fill the body. What does it feel like in your legs and your feet and your back? Really embodying your existence. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. You can let a smile come across your face. It's okay. It's okay. Just as I am. So thanks for joining this morning on the morning sit here with Journey Home Meditation. I really appreciate you. And I appreciate having this space. If there's anything you'd like to reach out about, you can reach me at journeyhomemeditation@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. I really would. So take a moment in your day and jot down some thoughts. Share them with the Sangha. We'd love to hear it. I'd be happy to read anything that you want me to share on a morning sit, and I can leave it anonymous if you'd like, whether it's a question or a statement or sharing an experience that you have in your own practice. The more we can do this with one another, the deeper our connections become. The more we are connected, the less we feel crisis, and we can step out of a constant state of survival into a space of equanimous love. It's pretty good here. So thanks for being here. Hariom.